I used to think betrayal would feel like a punch to the gut. Sudden, violent, overwhelming. But the truth is, it feels more like watching a slow leak in a boat you built from scratch, watching the water rise, knowing something's wrong, but convincing yourself you're just imagining it. Until one day, you're neck deep in it and the person holding the bucket is your wife. Her name was Carla. Beautiful, polished, smarter than she liked to let on. And when I met her, I thought she was my reward for surviving everything else. See, I wasn't supposed to make it out. I was born into the kind of poverty people write documentaries about: cracked windows, empty fridges, and a mom who had me at 15 and loved me just enough not to leave me on a doorstep. My father bailed before I knew what a last name meant, and my mom's parents kicked her out the moment I showed up. After that, it was a parade of boyfriends. But the one who stuck around the longest, Marvin, believed in parenting through bruises. We moved every 6 months. I learned early how to stay quiet, stay out of the way, and make money however I could. By 12, I had 3 jobs and a permanent scowl. School was a luxury. Food was a maybe. But there was one man who changed everything: Jay. Jay ran a string of restaurants and saw something in me. Maybe it was the way I cleaned tables like they owed me money, or maybe he just felt sorry for a kid wearing duct-taped sneakers in July. Either way, he taught me about business, real business, supply chains, margins, systems, and when I pitched a food delivery startup for independent kitchens, he didn't just listen. He backed me. From there, I built it all. My company grew to hundreds of employees in cities I used to only see on maps. I finally had stability, purpose, and Carla. At least, I thought I did. I met Carla at a conference in Austin. She was working for a boutique PR firm, representing one of our restaurant partners. She walked into the room like she owned it, took one look at me, and said, "You're the guy who built the Food Ghost Network, right?" That was her nickname for our logistics backend: accurate, clever, and just enough to make me smirk. She was magnetic. Not warm exactly, but polished in a way that made you want her approval. And I, raised on chaos and rejection, mistook that hunger for love. That's on me. We moved fast. Too fast. Within 6 months, we were married. I thought I was getting a partner. What I got was a strategist. Carla didn't want to build anything with me. She wanted to plug into a life already built and start redecorating. At first, it was little things: new furniture, name-dropping her, interior designer, casually correcting the way I dressed for client meetings. "You're representing more than yourself now," she'd say, like my entire personality needed a PR team. She never once asked about the early days. Never wanted to hear about Jay or what it was like surviving on gas station peanuts. She liked the version of me that existed after the struggle. Polished, profitable, convenient. Still, I told myself this was just adjustment, that she'd soften over time. People said marriage was work, so maybe this was just the overtime shift I hadn't clocked in for yet. Meanwhile, the company kept growing. I was pulling 18-hour days, building logistics pipelines, managing expansion, smoothing out union negotiations. And every time I walked through the front door at night, Carla would be on the couch with a glass of wine, scrolling through house listings for neighborhoods even wealthier than ours. "We should be living like people who actually made it," she said once without looking up. I stared at her, still in the same hoodie I'd worn in my first delivery van. Apparently, I hadn't made it enough. To be clear, Carla didn't marry me for my money. No, that would have been too honest. She married me for access. To the world I built, the people I knew, the credibility I earned bleeding for every damn inch of it. She played the role well: wifely smiles at business dinners, strategic compliments in front of investors. She had a gift for making people feel important. Everyone except me. At home, she was distant, polite, but cold. Conversations were transactional. I'd tell her about a new market we cracked, and she'd nod while texting someone. Ask her about her day, and I'd get fine. Same as usual. I started to feel like a visitor in my own house. Like I was being tolerated, not loved. I should have seen it. The signs were there. But when you grow up with nothing, stability feels like affection. And Carla was good at keeping up appearances. The real shift came when I started sending money to my mother again. Now, my relationship with her? Complicated. That woman had a talent for choosing the worst men in the state and acting surprised when they turned violent. But she was still my mother. So once the business was thriving, I made sure she and my stepbrother Ben weren't starving. Carla hated it. "They don't appreciate it," she said once, arms folded, standing in our kitchen like a prosecutor. "You're rewarding bad behavior." "Their family," I replied. She scoffed. "No, their baggage." That one stuck. Not because she was wrong necessarily, but because of how easily she said it. Like empathy was an outdated app she didn't bother updating. Eventually, Carla stopped hiding her disdain. She'd walk out of the room when I answered my mom's calls, make faces when Ben's name showed up on my phone. She called them leeches and parasites, and I told myself it was just tension. I didn't realize she was taking notes the whole time, studying my weak spots, waiting to use them later. But at the time, I thought the storm was coming from outside. I had no idea the real lightning was charging up right next to me on the couch. Then came Ben's big moment. Now, Ben was the kind of guy who could trip over a wireless signal, no ambition, no sense of timing, and no idea how hard life could hit until it actually did. He bounced between jobs, girlfriends, and couch cushions like gravity didn't apply to him. But somehow, he always landed on his feet, usually on someone else's dime. Mine more often than not. I'd been wiring him a monthly stipend since my second round of funding. Not because he earned it, but because I knew what it was like to stare down an empty fridge and a power bill you couldn't pay. It wasn't generosity. It was muscle memory. But Ben mistook support for endorsement. And Carla? She mistook it for weakness. I didn't find out until later, but she'd been meeting with him behind my back. Family bonding, she called it. That should have raised a flag. Carla never bonded unless there was something to gain. Turns out she'd been feeding Ben stories, twisting things, making me sound distant, ungrateful, arrogant. Your brother's changed, she told him. He doesn't remember where he came from. And Ben, always hungry for someone else to blame, swallowed every word. I started getting these weird calls from my mom. Cryptic, loaded. You think you're better than us now? She snapped once out of nowhere. I had to check the number twice to make sure I hadn't misdialed an angry Twitter comment. Then Mike showed up. Mike was my mom's latest boyfriend. A man whose entire personality revolved around protein powder, conspiracy theories, and how real men handled business. He cornered me at a family barbecue and said, with a smug little smile, "You know, sometimes accidents happen when people forget who they owe." I laughed it off at the time, because who threatens a man at a barbecue? But later that night, I realized something. Carla was unusually quiet. She hadn't said a word about the confrontation. She hadn't even looked surprised. After that night, something shifted in me. I'd spent years building things, systems, strategies, a company from dust, but I hadn't bothered to build one thing that mattered most. A line, a boundary. Carla watched me closely after the barbecue, like she was waiting to see which way I'd flinch. But I didn't flinch. I just started listening more carefully. Quiet men don't miss much. And once I tuned in, I realized just how loud the silence had become. Ben started asking pointed questions, stuff he had no business knowing. Logistics vendors, payroll windows, back-end scheduling software I'd never even mentioned to family. He'd never cared about any of it before. Now, suddenly, he wanted to talk. Synergy? Please. I played dumb. It wasn't hard. I'd grown up making myself invisible. Meanwhile, Carla started shifting too. She made these passive suggestions, little nudges toward delegating more or bringing in outside help. She wanted me to step back. Focus on us, she said one night, hand on my arm like we were in a Hallmark movie. You've already proven yourself. Yeah, I had. And now she wanted the keys to the kingdom I built. It all started making sense. Why she kept pushing me to share more, to make the structure less founder-dependent. Why she never missed a board dinner but always found a reason to skip my late-night code sessions or small team celebrations. Carla wasn't invested in the work. She was invested in the asset. And if I was the founder, that made me the obstacle. So I played along. I told her she was right. Told Ben we'd talk about opportunities. I started feeding them curated pieces of information, true, but outdated. Misdirection wasn't new to me. I'd been surviving on it since Marvin's fists taught me how to lie with my eyes. What Carla didn't know was that while she and Ben were drawing up their plans, I was already 6 moves ahead. I changed every internal system, rerouted access protocols, rotated vendor contacts, transitioned our financials to a security team she didn't even know existed. And the money? I'd stopped supporting the family weeks ago. Quietly, surgically. I watched the reactions roll in like storm clouds. They were just starting to realize the power was no longer in their hands. And Carla? She was about to find out she wasn't married to a fool. The real fireworks started when the money stopped. At first, it was subtle. A missed call from Ben. A vaguely accusatory text from my mother. Something about abandoning your roots. Carla noticed the tension, of course. She played it cool, but I saw her watching my phone like it held a live feed to her plans unraveling. Then Mike called. Direct. No filters. You think you're untouchable now? He said. You forget who helped you keep the peace. Helped me? That man couldn't keep a fern alive, let alone peace. But that call told me everything I needed to know. They were panicking, so I leaned in. I hosted a company-wide strategy offsite under the guise of Q4 alignment. Reality, it was a clean sweep. We rewired the entire logistics tree, replaced old security access, brought in a forensic IT consultant to audit for leaks. 3 layers deep, I found exactly what I expected. Ben had been logging into a dormant user profile, an old ops assistance account I hadn't touched in over a year. Someone had handed him the credentials, and it sure wasn't me. The breadcrumb trail wasn't hard to follow. Every login matched Carla's laptop MAC address. Every session occurred during the same hours she claimed she was catching up on emails. She'd been feeding them, from my home, from my trust. I should have been angry, but what I felt was worse. It was cold, hollow, like watching someone forge your signature on a thank you card. And she didn't stop. That was the kicker. Even after the systems changed, even after the money dried up, she kept up the act. Dinners, kisses on the cheek, casual talk about maybe buying a place closer to the water. She thought I was still in the dark. What she didn't know was I had already spoken to legal, changed the structure of the company, transferred ownership of core IP to a shell firm, one she wasn't even listed on. On paper, she thought she was married to the majority shareholder of a multimillion-dollar company. In reality, she was married to a ghost. Carla always had a gift for timing, showing up just when people needed reassurance and leaving just before the truth landed. So when she suggested we get away for the weekend, I knew exactly what she was doing. Testing the temperature, trying to gauge how much I knew. I played along, of course, smiled through it, drove us to a rented cabin she'd picked, complete with wood-paneled walls and a staged rustic charm. She lit candles like we were 25 again, poured wine she suddenly knew the name of, and asked me how things were really going. I almost laughed. She was trying to reset the board without acknowledging the pieces had already moved. I'm proud of you, she said, tracing the rim of her glass. You've come so far. You, not we. That was always the giveaway with Carla. She was fluent in the language of partnership, but she never conjugated the verbs correctly. It was always your work, your company, your name on the article. And when I asked her if she'd ever thought about starting something of her own, she looked at me like I'd suggested shoveling snow in July. No, she said. I already have everything I need, right? Me. Or at least the version of me that paid for spa memberships and upgraded flights. The version she could smile beside at events and introduce as the genius behind the company, with a wink that made it sound like she had something to do with any of it. But that weekend, that was the first time I realized she wasn't just opportunistic. She was strategic. She wasn't checking in on me. She was running diagnostics, looking for cracks. Except there weren't any. Not anymore. Because the business was safer than it had ever been. And Carla? She was the only variable left exposed. She kissed me goodnight like everything was fine. And I let her. But in my mind, I was already writing the final chapter. Because every move I made from here on out was going to be surgical. When we got back from that little weekend getaway, Carla kicked things into overdrive. She started suggesting we restructure parts of the company. Said we needed to think bigger, bring in outside capital, unlock new value. Fancy phrases, straight from the mouths of people who've never had to choose between heat and groceries. The kicker? She offered to help. I could handle the investor side, she said, spinning her wine glass like it was a roulette wheel. You're brilliant, but sometimes too close to the work. You need space to breathe. Breathe? Lady, I used to sleep in a hardware store basement. My entire life's been held together with duct tape and forward motion. Breathing was never the problem. I just nodded. Told her I'd think about it. Told her it meant a lot that she wanted to get more involved. And then I started testing her. I leaked a fake internal memo to her, just a little fabrication about a potential buyout from a tech firm in Denver. Completely made up. Not even a whisper of truth. I emailed it to her personal account on a Sunday night, mentioned I hadn't told anyone else yet. Tuesday morning, Ben called. You really thinking about selling? He asked, pretending like he wasn't sweating through the phone. Boom. There it was. The pipeline. I didn't confront her. That wasn't the point. I wasn't collecting apologies, I was collecting evidence. Patterns. Confirmation. And she gave it to me. Over the next few weeks, I sent out more breadcrumbs. A fake restructuring doc. A mock personnel list with fake promotions. Each one timed, each one tagged, each one leading right back to her. Every time, Ben or Mike circled back. Sometimes subtly. Sometimes not. If you're stepping back, Ben said once, I'd be happy to help manage things. You? You once got locked in a bathroom at a Wendy's because the door said pull and you pushed for 10 minutes. I started keeping a journal. Timestamped everything. Met with my attorney. We drafted contingency plans, restructured ownership rights, and made sure Carla's name was nowhere near anything with decision-making power. To the outside world, we were just another power couple. Photos. Smiles. Matching holiday sweaters. But behind the curtain, I was arming for war. I always figured if betrayal came, it would come loud. Slamming doors, shouting matches, maybe even some broken glass for dramatic effect. What I got instead was passive-aggressive optimism. You've been under so much stress, Carla said one night, setting down a bowl of quinoa like it was a peace offering. Maybe it's time you took a real break. Travel. Recharge. Let the team take over for a while. Right? Let go of the wheel just long enough for the car to conveniently drive itself into a ditch with my name still on the insurance. She'd been circling the same point for weeks. I needed rest, I was burning out, I was holding on too tightly. It wasn't concern. It was strategy. She wanted me out of the loop, physically gone, so she could pull whatever strings she'd been carefully threading behind my back. I asked her one night, real calm, if I took a break, who would you trust to run things? She didn't hesitate. Well, Ben's eager. He knows the operation and he's family. And I could help him navigate the big picture stuff. Of course she would. That was the moment I stopped wondering if she was in on it. I knew. Not because she admitted it, but because she finally stopped pretending. She poured herself another glass of wine like we were talking about vacation homes, not a hostile takeover. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I just smiled and said, maybe you're right. Then I spent the next 72 hours locking down everything. Every server. Every admin credential. Every third-party contract. Carla had no idea the network I'd built wasn't just wires and code, it was loyalty. And when I quietly cut off access, the people who mattered didn't blink. They called me. They asked if it was time. It was. I moved funds. Transferred IP. Froze every open line of credit she could have accessed through our shared accounts. Then I called our CFO, brought him in over dinner, and rewrote the rules of engagement. By Monday morning, Ben's login didn't work. Carla's consulting email bounced. And my phone? Quiet. Eerily quiet. Which told me exactly what I needed to know. They were regrouping. But me? I was already miles ahead. The silence didn't last long. By Wednesday, Carla cracked. She came into my office, tight smile, silk blouse, eyes darting like she was trying to figure out which version of me she was talking to. The sucker? Or the surgeon? Something's wrong with my work account, she said, like she hadn't just tried to stage a corporate coup with my dirtbag of a stepbrother. I didn't look up from my laptop. Must be a technical issue. She waited. Stared. Tilted her head like maybe I'd blink first. Then she did what she always did when charm failed, pivoted to guilt. I've supported you through everything, you know, she said, voice soft like a funeral hymn. This company changed our lives. That word again. We built this together, she added. I looked up at her then. Not angry. Not even disappointed. Just tired of the reruns. Name one supplier, I said. She blinked. What? Just one. From the core routing markets. Name a single vendor. Silence. That's the thing about people like Carla, they're excellent actors until you hand them a script they didn't write. She recovered quickly. That's not fair. I contributed in other ways. You did, I said. Just not to the business. That was the first time I saw her crack. The mask didn't fall off, but it slipped. Her eyes went cold. Not sad. Not hurt. Just calculating. Is this really what you want? She asked. I smiled. What I want? Carla, I'm way past wanting. I'm working the exit strategy. She left the office without another word. No slamming doors, no dramatic exit. Just a quiet retreat. That night, Ben texted me. We need to talk. Urgent. I didn't reply. Because I already knew what was coming. I could feel it. Carla wasn't just pulling strings anymore. She was about to swing the wrecking ball. She thought I'd locked her out of the company. But she had one more card to play. And it wasn't in the business. It was in my life. The card she played came dressed in a summer dress, holding a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Dinner. She suggested it like nothing was wrong. Said we hadn't connected in weeks. That we should have a night to ourselves. No talk about business. No distractions. I almost admired the commitment to the performance. So I said yes. We went to the same upscale place she always chose, dim lighting, valet, white tablecloths, and a menu that made you feel underdressed no matter what you wore. She made polite small talk, complimented the wine, told a story about a friend's gallery opening. And then she dropped it. I've been thinking, she said, lightly buttering her bread like this was just another Tuesday. Maybe it's time we took a real look at our estate structure. The trust. The wills. Everything. I nodded. Sure. You thinking about finally drafting yours? She laughed. I mean ours. Joint. Makes more sense, right? Especially with a baby on the way. And just like that, the air changed. I didn't move. Didn't blink. Just kept my eyes on hers like I was staring down a sniper. A baby? I asked. She nodded. Calm. Cool. Like this was the natural next chapter in our fairy tale. Except I knew it wasn't mine. That's the thing about being married to a strategist, you learn how to spot a setup. Carla didn't get pregnant by accident. She got pregnant to rewrite the rules. A baby changes optics. Leverage. Public sympathy. Asset negotiation. It wasn't a child. It was a chess piece. And I just watched her move it into position. So I smiled. Raised my glass. Said congratulations. Because if Carla thought this was checkmate, she was about to learn something new about me. I don't play to win. I play to end games. The next morning, I went for a run I didn't need. Not for the cardio, my heart rate had already been doing backflips since Carla's little dinner bomb, but to think. That's how I work. I run in straight lines when life starts zigzagging. By mile 3, I had it mapped out. See, Carla thought the pregnancy would freeze me in place. She was banking on sentiment. On optics. On the idea that I wouldn't walk away from something that sounded like family. But she didn't realize one thing: I never said I was the father. And I never would. I played it quiet. No questions. No accusations. I let her assume I believed every word. Because if she was lying, and I was almost sure she was, then pushing too soon would make her cautious. And if she wasn't, then she was still trying to trap me, just with blood instead of contracts. Either way, I needed proof. So I went back to what I knew best: systems. Carla had a pattern. Every Thursday afternoon, she had a wellness session. Therapy, she said. Self-care. Turns out wellness had a name. And a gym membership. A guy named Vince. Tall, fit, just enough charm to get through life without ever having to develop a personality. I recognized the type. He used to corner girls in the break room back when I was mopping floors at 16. He also happened to teach a strength class at a private studio downtown, Thursdays at 2 p.m. I sent one of our field security guys to sit in the parking lot. Just take pictures. Nothing shady. No confrontation. The photos came back that night. Carla. Vince. Same car. Same seatbelt pattern. Same smug smile I'd seen her use on investors. I didn't react. Didn't tell her. I just saved every image, every timestamp. Started a new folder on my drive labeled estate planning. She wanted to talk about the future? Fine. Let's talk. You know what they don't tell you about betrayal? It doesn't burn. Not at first. It settles in like fog. Quiet. Creeping. It wraps around you until you can't tell whether you're cold or just numb. By the time Carla came home the following week, glowing from her appointment, I'd already met with my legal team. Not just my business attorney, my personal one. The one who rewrote my will in under 24 hours and helped me draft a post-nuptial agreement so clean it could have been used as glass. I wasn't going to accuse Carla of anything. I was going to offer her something. Let's make things fair, I told her over breakfast. Now that we've got a child on the way, we should protect each other. Legally. Her fork paused midair. Post-nup, she said, like the word offended her espresso. Exactly, I replied. Just a formality. You get the new lake house. I keep the business. Everything else split 50-50. She stared at me a little too long. You don't trust me? No, I said calmly. I just want things to be clear. You're the one who said clarity is key to a strong marriage, remember? She signed it. Too quickly. She thought she'd won again. Thought she could trade short-term agreements for long-term leverage. But she didn't know that while she was busy playing Wife of the Year, I'd had a lab quietly run a test on those prenatal vitamins she left out on the counter. They weren't prenatal. They were standard iron supplements. Over the counter. Cheap. The kind a woman might take to appear pregnant, just long enough to stall, to manipulate, to pull the oldest trick in the book, the illusion of a shared future. But Carla wasn't just faking a pregnancy. She was faking everything. And I was done pretending I didn't know. There's a moment in every con where the con artist thinks they've nailed it, sealed the deal, pulled the wool, tightened the trap. Carla hit that moment the day she started planning our gender reveal. Yeah. She went full Pinterest. Balloons, catering, a cake that bleeds pink or blue when you cut it open. The whole thing felt like a bad sketch comedy bit, except the punchline was my life. She invited friends, family, even a couple of bored spouses to make it look inclusive. What she didn't know was that I had quietly invited someone too. A woman named Allison. Not a lawyer. Not an investigator. A technician. From a private diagnostic lab. She showed up just before the cake came out, low-key, clipboard in hand, no badge, just business. I pulled Carla aside. Calm. Polite. We need to talk, I said. She blinked. Can it wait until after the reveal? I smiled. No. Because there's nothing to reveal. She froze. I handed her an envelope. Inside, the results of a blood panel run off a glass she'd been drinking from a week ago. No pregnancy hormones. Not even close. You lied, I said. She tried to pivot. This is insane, Evan. You're being paranoid. No, I said. I've been patient. And now I'm being precise. Then I nodded toward the crowd. You should cut that cake. Give them a show. But after that, we're done. Her face cracked, first time I'd ever seen the real Carla in public. Not the brand. Not the mask. Just a woman who realized the play was over and the audience was walking out. She didn't cut the cake. She left it on the table untouched, melting under the weight of its own lie. The guests murmured. The music stalled. I walked outside and stood in the driveway like a man walking out of his own funeral and realizing it's not his name on the headstone. The divorce was quiet. Not amicable. Not ugly. Just surgical. Carla didn't fight it. Not really. Once she realized the walls weren't just closing in, they were built by me, she went into damage control mode. Tried to bargain dignity for assets. Offered silence in exchange for respect. I gave her what she never gave me, boundaries. She kept the lake house. The car. The designer bags she never took the tags off. I kept the business. The trademarks. The future. And the postnup? Airtight. My lawyer called it a masterpiece of preemptive warfare. Carla never saw it coming. She thought the baby lie would trap me. Instead, it freed me. Jay called me a few weeks after it was finalized. Said he always had a bad feeling about her. I told him I didn't. And that was the problem. But here's the truth, I don't regret marrying her. I regret giving her the part of me that still believed love had to be earned through sacrifice. That if I just worked hard enough, just gave enough, someone would finally stay for the right reasons. Carla stayed for the spotlight. But I built the stage. Yeah? I've stepped off it. I moved across the state. Quiet place. Real neighbors. Built a smaller team, tighter operation. No leaks. No optics. Just work I believe in and people I trust. I'm even expecting my first real child with someone who doesn't ask for passwords, just presence. The last time I saw Carla, she was walking out of mediation in heels too high for the courthouse steps. Still trying to look the part. Still playing the role. But the show's over now. And I'm not in the audience anymore.